The National Guard and other agencies in Wisconsin will test its preparedness and communication in 5 northeast Wisconsin counties over 3 days in Midway. The exercise, called Dark Sky, will simulate a long-term mass power outage.
What happens if my power would be out for 24, 48, 72 hours, or maybe 37 days?
That includes responders from federal, state, and local levels, encompassing private utility groups, the FBI, and fire departments.
The what ifs is what we're trying to do, is fill in those spots for the what ifs.
It'll be all hands on deck here in Omro with the police, fire department, and the Red Cross taking part in the exercise Dark Sky.
The training kicks off on May 15th and lasts for 3 days. Different counties have different roles, with Dane County serving as a communicator in between.
One way to get at America, and an easy way, quite frankly, is through an EMP attack, an electromagnetic pulse attack.
Consider every major city in America, how does it get its water supply? Consider that every major city in America, its average food supply on hand is 21 to 28 days. Consider, where do we get our medication? Consider what happens in nursing homes and hospitals. What happens to our transportation grid? Anything driven that, well, most of them have computers in them, they're all gone.
An electromagnetic pulse that can cripple everything from stoplights to computers to the defense grid.
An electromagnetic pulse attack, also known as an EMP, could be devastating. It could easily damage the country's critical infrastructure, especially the electrical grid.
If a terrorist organization or North Korea or Iran detonated just a single nuclear weapon at high altitude over the United States, it would destroy the electric grid and our critical infrastructures and put at risk the lives of up to 90% of the American people. We all depend directly or indirectly. We all live directly or indirectly off of electricity. We're an electronic civilization.
%, let me repeat that, 90% of all Americans will die within 12 to 18 months after an EMP event. This study was done in 2008. Has anything been done since? No.
If it sounds far-fetched, consider that last July, a steamer owned by Iran's ally, North Korea, was found in Panama hiding nuclear-capable SA-2 missiles under 10,000 tons of sugar. Experts believe Russia has given EMP technology to North Korea.
In our highly connected, just-in-time, efficient technological civilization, to cause chaos that could cause tens of millions of Americans to die before it's sorted out.
Tens of millions?
Tens of millions, because if you have no electric power for 6 months to a year, you have no food delivery, you have no gasoline, you have no water. You think about that, it's pretty bad.
Well, that's a horrifying possibility. How are we protecting against that happening?
We're not.
Today, the old duck and cover films from Cold War days seem campy and quaint. To many, a nuclear blast and its resultant electromagnetic pulse, or EMP, seems so unimaginable, so unlikely, that few worry about it, and fewer still take any precautions.
It's not real, and it's something out of a James Bond movie. A general consensus is that it is not a real threat. It's not imminent by any stretch of the imagination.
We have information, for example, the data from actual high-altitude nuclear detonations that were conducted by us and the Russians back in the 1961-62 time frame that did things like knock the lights out in Hawaii.
An EMP is a short burst of electromagnetic energy that all nuclear explosions produce to varying degrees. A large EMP triggered over the United States from an orbiting nuke at the right altitude could fry the circuitry of cell phones, render electronic banking, automobile computers, railways, air traffic control, and airplanes themselves useless. Food would rot in refrigerators and in farm fields, with no means of transporting agri-products to population centers. In the following weeks and months, a truly Mad Max world would evolve. Dr. Pry believes a naivete about EMP pervades the Western democracies, where nukes are kept mostly out of sight and out of mind.
But for totalitarian and authoritarian states, as in the case of Iran, and possibly North Korea, the use of nuclear weapons is not only unthinkable, but in their Open source military doctrine. You know, they've written for years about being able to win a nuclear war, that you can fight a nuclear war.
Adding to EMP worries, North Korea's recent successful test of a solid-fueled ballistic missile. The solid fuel needs less preparation, meaning less warning time for those targeted. In addition, North Korea also has at least 2 observation satellites that orbit over the U.S. at an altitude ideal for an EMP attack.
If the lights went out, it's more than just the lights. Explain what could actually happen to people if there's a massive cyber attack.
Well, in a place like Manhattan, for example, if the power goes out, you know how the fire department and the police spend the first couple of days getting people out of stalled elevators. You're talking about a community of, what, 8 million people? The food in a place like Manhattan would run out in a couple of days. New York State has several million MREs, meals ready to eat. But when you take several million and you divide it by 8 million, you're talking about maybe a 2 or 3 day food supply. What happens on day 4?
If someone exploded a high-altitude nuclear weapon over the United States, the electromagnetic pulse would affect all the electronics within line of sight of that burst.
Were the blast to occur high enough, the entire continental United States would be left with no electric power or the things that depend on electric power.
Medical services wouldn't be available because they needed electric power. Telephones wouldn't work. The traffic lights would stop working. Big traffic jam. Transportation would be shut down. Electronic funds transfer wouldn't work, so you wouldn't get your paycheck. You wouldn't be able to use your credit card. Food stocks would run out very quickly. Everything we know about life today that makes it convenient and efficient would be shut down. The day after an EMP attack, the configuration of the country would be more like that around 1800. The problem is that the country had a very small population at that time compared to the 300 million people who live here today. There would be a real challenge to keeping our population even alive, much less strong and viable after a high-altitude EMP event.
6-4, Mike, affirmative. Left turn on 7.